And he started to do a very special kind of documentation in those years. He and his international team, they mapped out prisons by ISIS and now also the Syrian regime in 3D to document and investigate what has happened there. Hello, Ahmad. Welcome. And then on the screen, now finally we see those two. There's Mariana, who is a human rights advocate and legal investigator who is documenting and trying to bring to justice crimes against humanity and war crimes in Syria. And with Mariana, the point is we are usually in the same place, either in Berlin or in Damascus, and we always manage not to meet. But today she's actually very far away, and she got up very early for you guys because she's in Boston, and it's like 6:15 or something in Boston. Good morning, America. Mariana, hi. And last but not least, my very dear colleague, Anna, who is also in a different time zone. She is in Cairo right now. She's our ARD Cairo office chief. And she has reported extensively about the Middle East, including Syria. And she is about to leave for Syria again. But today she's still in Cairo. And I'm very happy to have all of you here with me on stage and on screen. So what we want to talk about in this panel is how you do reporting, documenting work in the midst of turmoil, upheaval, in a moment of big, big change. And this is what happened in December in Syria when the dictator Assad was toppled. And I think I want to do a first quick round. And I want to know from all of you very quickly, where were you when Assad came down? And what were the first steps that you guys took professionally when you realized we can now do research in Syria again? I'm going to start with you, Amer.
Yeah, hi everyone. I was here in Berlin in 7th of December, and that was really a big moment for me. I couldn't believe myself because that was really the big dream of my life to have Syria free from the dictator. And I was really like with many Syrian people in Berlin and thinking what's like if that will really happen or not. And in the night, like we saw the first videos from Sednaya prison, and that was really the big shock of me and of all the people was around me. And from there we realize it's a new time will be for Syria in the future. And from there we really I couldn't sleep for many days because it was really crazy. I can't really say what I felt and what that's mean for me. And I couldn't do anything in the first few days. After that, I sent all the team I was working with, in the field in Syria, in Iraq, in many different places around in the Middle East, to Damascus to start the things we start. I can tell after that.
Yes, we will definitely talk more about what you then did and how you did it. Mariana, what about you? First moments, first steps.
First of all, thank you very much, Christine, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be with Amir and Anna on this panel. I was also, as Amir mentioned, in Berlin. I was sitting in front of my TV and trying to make sense of what's happening, and the events were happening so quickly because one area would be freed, and then they would move to another area, it would be freed, and this would be so fast. That was astonishing at a certain moment. There is a lot of happiness and a lot of joy, but also there is a lot of sadness and pain. This was the first time, as Amir said, we had footage coming out from Sednaya. We had footage coming out from different detention facilities. You hear for years what people tell you while documenting and investigating what they have suffered from and what they have seen, but then you see it in front of your eyes, and that's a completely different reality and completely different feeling to some extent. So it was a mixture of feelings between joy and happiness that finally the Assad regime has fallen. It actually happened. And also, what pain are people feeling at the moment? I think this was my feeling at the time. And the first decision that was made that 2 weeks later, together with my colleagues from Huquqiyat, we traveled immediately to Syria because there were a lot of information that we were missing for cases we were working on. And we thought, this is the time. We can actually collect these documentation, not move them with us. I will explain more how we did that, but just have the access to this information finally, and also have access to the sites where these crimes were committed, especially that we were looking mostly at checkpoints where we realized that in some very short period, those will be removed. So this was the first action we took, and we're going to speak more about it later.
With Anna, I know where she was in that very moment because I was there too. We were both in Cairo and we were pretty much stressed out by the situation. I remember that. But Anna then quickly left to go to Damascus. And so, Anna, maybe you can give us also a quick glance on what you did once you actually entered Syria and what you and the team, did as first steps in the reporting approach.
Definitely. I mean, for me personally, it was one of the most moving moments in my time being a correspondent, because since years I had tried to come to Syria. I was there just before the beginning of the war, and then we were denied access all the time we applied, all the time the visa was not allowed to, because of course Assad and the regime knew that we would not report nicely about him. So we were very close to come actually to Syria a few times, but all the time they said, no, you're not allowed to enter. I remember when I came to Syria in 2010, I mean, it was a very tense moment crossing this border. People told me it's like going to the old DDR. It's kind of, you're super nervous. You stand there with shaking hands and your passport, and they don't let you in. And this was exactly what we were expecting again. And as Christian said, the moment where we got this news, I mean, Mariana, you described very well how quickly things developed. I mean, just 2 days ahead, we were asked, do you think Assad will come down this weekend? I said, are you sure? I'm not sure. I can't believe it after such a long time. I mean, and then we got this news, Aleppo is down, Homs is down, Hama. We really were thinking, how can we go into Syria? So we sent the first crew to the Kurdish northern part to at least have somebody in Syria. And we were planning to go immediately when the border is open to Damascus. So when the moment came, Assad is down, we were starting packing immediately and heading up to Beirut, and then going to the border to come to Syria for the first time after years. And this was really a goosebump moment for everyone.
Anna, what was the first story you did? You still remember? Like the first, real story, not just news?
Yeah, I mean, we came to this border and everyone was expecting, oh, this might be difficult again. So we were first at the Lebanese side of the border. We were handing over our passports and doing all the procedure. And then we had to change cars because we were told, okay, you shouldn't go with a Lebanese car to Syria. So we entered kind of the new cars. We drove in this no man's land for a few minutes, and everyone in the car was it was such a tense situation because no one was knowing what will happen the next moment and how will they be with us, how will they greet us or not greet us. And then I will never forget this moment where we came to this border checkpoint and I really had goosebumps. And then there was this tough guy with long beard standing there with many weapons, and he looked at us, had a big smile and said, welcome to Syria, ahlan wa sahlan, hi. We said, journalist, yes, come in. This was a moment we will never forget. I mean, let me check if it works. I even have some pictures from the border, from the moment where we were there. It was you couldn't believe that it works like this. This is exactly, here you go. This is the Lebanese side of the border. we changed the car, and this is exactly the moment where we crossed the old checkpoint, and where, I mean, a few years ago we were standing there with shaking knees. A car like this to the side, I mean, they told us there were no big clashes, but I mean, this guy obviously had tried to flee to Lebanon and it didn't work out. And yeah, we could do interviews with these guys, one of those greeting us there and being, well, astonishingly friendly to us. And well, this is something else. We will come to this later. Yeah, definitely. So these were moments I will never forget in my life. And definitely the first thing we were talking was, where can we do a live position? Who can we talk to into doing interviews at the border immediately and collect as many interviews as we can to report?
Collecting is a good word that leads us also to what Mariana then did once she was on the ground. And we now want to enter a bit into the work that was done once people were actually there. And I want to start with your work, Mariana, and maybe you can also share some of the images, because I think what already comes out of the talk with you guys is that there were suddenly new options to do research, Mariana. You already mentioned it, and it meant, and this is a bit what we are going to focus on in this panel, being able to go to facilities that were off limits for so long, the prisons. And the prison system in Syria, it would be its own panel, but just to be on the very surface, it's been extensive and it's been very cruel and harsh. And Mariana, you went to a specific prison in the very first days when you got back, and let us know, just shortly, give us some impressions how you actually did your work. How do you collect evidence? How do you document crimes, if possible?
Absolutely, Christine. So just a disclaimer before I start. One of the, in 2 weeks' time, when we went to Syria, there has already been a lot of people going into detention facilities, collecting a lot of documentations. And there was also a bit from our, at least how we felt at the time as legal practitioners, a mishandling of these information. We're talking about documents that can stand evidence in courtrooms. We're talking about documents that needs to be handled very carefully and very strictly. And what we realized is that if we don't have any job to do in any detention facility, we're not going to go. Why would we enter the detention facility? There is also a kind of respect to these places, people having been held there for years. There were different kind of elements that we were considering that made us think that, no, we're not going to enter any detention facility. But there was one in particular that we were interested in, which was the Air Force intelligence. Why? Because in one case that we were developing, a big amount of those individuals are believed to have been held detained in this particular detention facility. And we thought maybe we try to enter and we try to see what kind of documentation we can photograph and get the photographs with us to analyze and to work on the case we're working on. We arrived to the Air Force intelligence, and what happened is that we were not allowed to enter. At that moment, it was a time where you needed to be granted acceptance to go with inside the Air Force intelligence, and this approval needed to come from someone in the Syrian interim government, and we don't have any contacts with the Syrian interim government. So what we did is that we took the other way around and we looked at the back of the Air Force intelligence. And what we've seen at the time, that's what I shared with you, Christine. I hope I can share my screen. Let me check. Yes. So basically, the first thing that we saw is the huge amount of IDs and passports of individuals who are believed to have been detained within that particular detention facility. We've also seen especially women and their children coming to the detention facility and trying to look within those IDs and passports and trying to find any information about their relatives. I didn't share those information to respect the dignity of those, and we don't have their informed consent to do so, but at least you can have an idea of the amount of documentation we saw. We saw three different kinds of documentation. We saw IDs, we saw passports, and other kind of identifying documents of individuals, and we saw papers. And those papers looked like this. Let me just check where I put the footage. Yes. Okay. So those papers looked like that, basically, where you have, and I redacted these information. Again, we don't have the informed consent of those individuals to share, but what you have is the names, the first names and the last names of the individuals. You have the region from where they were taken, and then you have the situation in which they were handled and who handled their basically situation. So the
Mariana, just a quick, because unfortunately the beamer is not so good, so we can't see all of it. Just to explain, it's a slip of paper, really out of a notebook or something, and it's handwritten information, right?
That's true, 100%. And the problem with handwritten information is that it's very difficult to read, but then again, you need to kind of look close and read them. But the problem is that those notebooks were thrown on the floor with rain coming down, tearing the papers. So you really needed to save them. You really need to take them with you, try to document as much as you can, and then return them back to the Air Force intelligence. And that's what we did. We asked the permission of those individuals who were responsible to look at the Air Force intelligence, that we take them with us, we photograph them, and we bring them back to their custody. Why I talk about this process is because as legal practitioners, we're not allowed to just take documents with us and move and use them in courts. There is this clear chain of custody process that needs to occur for us to say this document reached our hands. So that was the other kind of documentation. The fifth kind of documentation was orders, and those were written orders from individuals who were in the Air Force intelligence to either other detention facilities or other individuals. And what we did was of three stages. First, we thought the way that the documents are handled is not correct. We asked for permission of the guards who were standing at the checkpoint if we can start working on putting these documents in order. So the ordering them according to cities, for example, Suwaida, Damascus, Aleppo, Idlib. Try to make sure that these documents are put in boxes to protect them from any rain. Again, all of this happened spontaneously. We didn't prepare ourselves to do any of this work. It's also not our job, and we should not be doing it because they need to be handled carefully and from trained teams. But in the lack of any other option, we found ourselves doing it at the time. And also, we started realizing that the families who were coming as we were doing the work, asked, can we support? So we said, yes, please, let's do it together. But then the other group of family that came, we stayed there for 8 hours approximately. They started finding the IDs and the passports within the boxes very easily. And this was maybe a 7 to 8 hours process that happened, but then it was a straightforward process. It was then easier for people to find documents.
And Mariana, can I ask, just like out of this process, this documentation, this collection, this taking pictures of the evidence, will you be able to actually conduct cases? Will you be able to solve cases? Did you already solve any case of missing persons, whatever?
Yes, I'm going to come back to this one. I just wanted to say that after we've done that process, we reached out to international organizations like ICRC. For us, the ICRC is one of the international organizations that should be responsible for this kind of job. But then they said that they are not mandated to do this work. We reached out to the White Helmets. The White Helmets had a lack of capacity with the amount of work that they had all over the country at the time. So what I mean to say is that there was definitely a lack of capacity of how to handle these documentations. Now, how those were useful, we reached out first to the IINP, which is the International Independent Mechanism on Missing People, and we provided them with the information. Their job is that they are mandated from the UN to collect all of these information, to try to build connections, to understand how detainees were held in different detention facilities, how they were moved from one detention facility to another, what was the logic behind it, but also to respond to the reports they get from families of the missing people, to look at these documentation and to try to give the information to the family. While looking at the documents, we realized that we recognized one or two names of people who we already were aware their family members were missing, and we informed them that this is the name that we found. And this is not a determination that this is where the fate of this person has ended. And I think this is very important to mention. This is the documentation that says this person's documents were held in this detention facility. We don't know where this person is, and we don't know where he was transferred or she was, or they were not. And I think I would end with this. I think, to me, one of the biggest problem, which is the mass graves, because there you also have a lot of knowledge, you have a lot of information on what happened to the fate of some of those individuals, but you don't have neither the forensic tools or forensic knowledge to handle the mass graves. And there is nothing that is happening at the time about them. So only what's happening, we've seen footages of journalists going inside the mass graves and reporting from inside Syria. Very, very, very problematic. Those are to be dealt with as crime scenes and not to be handled in this way. But then we saw a move of closing these mass graves when organizations like the White Helmets would know about them, and then sealing them off from anyone who is entering them until we know how to handle them. And those are urgent crime sites, because if they're not handled, then the cycle of what happened to this person in part is not ended. We don't know. Yeah, so that's what I would say for now.
This shows the complicated situation in such a moment of upheaval and also, at least for that very moment, lawlessness, I would say. Amer, before we come to your project, just quickly to Anna, since you were there as a journalist in the infamous Sednaya prison that we're going to have a look at in a second with Amer. How did you, in that moment when you entered those premises, how did you go about? How did you find the witnesses? How do you deal with people that are deeply traumatized and you know, and you don't really know their story, and it's really hard to verify in that very moment their story, their situation, their connections. How did you deal with the situation?
Yeah, I think Mariana described very well also the situation we found in Sednaya. So when we arrived there, I mean, Sednaya is a huge building complex with different levels and floors and also hidden places. When you came there, there was a huge crowd of people, desperate families waiting in front of the building and hoping that one of the people searching there around would find a little trace of life, a little sign that one of their loved ones is here, was here, or could even be found. So it was a very unclear situation with lots of people also surrounding us and saying, please, I want to tell my story. I want to tell what my son went through, what my father, my husband, lots of women also there with photos of their loved ones. And exactly what you described, Mariana, we found the floor full of little pieces of papers, and there were written names on it. So we could really imagine how, people went in. I don't know if it was HTS or other militias or even the people themselves, and they tore these documents into pieces and threw them around. So it was a big mess, and people were running through this, and it was completely dark in the building. So you can imagine it was kind of a ghost atmosphere, just a dark room, no windows, no light at all, just the flashlights of the cell phones. And you go from one little piece of paper to the other one, searching for the name of your loved one. Let me search if I can find some pictures about it. It was a moment where we, as journalists, of course, tried everything to show. There are some pictures. Can you see a picture now?
Yes.
So this is where we entered Sednaya. And here you can already see the papers on the floor. So also outside, there were lots of papers everywhere. And I was thinking to myself, asking myself, what will happen to the papers? Who's coming to collect these papers? Because this is the only proof people have that their person is still alive. And this is how one woman told us the story about her son, who was basically jailed, was 18, and they could visit him one time, and there he didn't have any tooth anymore in his mouth, and was only about 30 kilos anymore. So a big tragedy everywhere, these papers. And this is Sednaya from outside, where you can still see the fire who was there just 2 days. This is how it looked inside, you know, people going around, you were not sure where you are, being careful, there might be holes in the ground as well. There was still hope that they might find people alive. So we were even there with a rescue team. They were going down in the earth to search for other people. And you can see how many people are around them, surrounding them and asking, did you find my son? Did you find him? It was a very, very tense situation. And for us as journalists, definitely a moment I will never forget in my life.
So it kind of shows how difficult it is also to do reporting in this very moment. This is from what I take from your description, Anna. But what Amer is doing is trying to go beyond the first step, basically, with his work. You're trying to do documentation and storytelling by exploring and investigating the architecture. And since we now started with Sednaya, we want to show you a little piece of his work, and he's going to comment on what we see and how they are doing the research there. So I'm going to try to do that now on screen. Let's see if I'm able to show it. And also, let's see if we can show it also for everyone else. I assume. Okay. Let me see if I can... Okay. Okay, so let's start this one. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a 3D model of Sednaya prison. We spend like around 1 month scanning the building. And since like, I think 6 months, like we are filming with witnesses there, many different people, more until now, more than 50 person. And we build stories with, and we try to understand like each part, like for which used, and the system of the prison and where they killed people, how the people eat here, like the daily life of this prison. And we study also a different time because like it's like since the 80s, this prison, it's working, and there is many different levels of the life and the situation in this prison. And we try, and also when we really try to see the document and the information, as like Anna and Mariana like telling, it's a crazy situation with the papers. Until now, I think 2-3 weeks ago I was there, and still the same situations, papers in the ground, and really thousands of papers just in the ground. And it's so crazy and sad situation. And like we will be able to see this 3D tour like in the 1st of September, to be really able to understand what happens there, here like the clothes of the prisoners. And when you walk here, it's like, it's really like, as Anna was saying, it's dark, and also like if you spend time there, like you start to get sick because of the smell and all the sickness. Here, like it's a shoes, like thousands of shoes in this room, like the shoes of the prisoners. And yeah, and somehow it's I think it's the only prison. It's still like in Syria, like the Syrian regime prisons, still empty because the new Syrian regime, they use all the prisons again, like the most of the mukhabarat, the secret police prisons. Now they are working. Like the, I mean, yeah, we are. Yeah, that's the cells. Like there is clothes and all the details of the prisoners, but as we see, they like in the first 3 or 4 weeks, it was really like there is no people saving this building, and they stole many things, like all the electronic stuff, many things, everything, the cameras, like they try to steal everything, can have some value to sell it. And that's what happens in many different places. And because they really, in the beginning, they didn't care so much to save these buildings, and that's why we see like in Mariana picture all this ID card in the floor, because it's really not important. And the problem, it's until now, because like the new system, or I don't know how to name them, the new Syrian regime, they decide to not save all this history of all this bad history of Syria. They want to use this bad, like horrible prisons again. And the first day for me was in Syria. I decided to return to Al Khatib prison. It's the first prison the Syrian regime put me in 2011. And that was really one of the like so horrible prisons in Syria. And it's famous in Germany because of this trial in Koblenz with Anwar Aslan. And when I entered the place, I wanted to see like where's the cell where I was. Like I spent there like around 2 weeks, and then they opened the door and there is a new prisoners, and that was so shocking for me. Like I was really like, who they are. And the jailer, he told me, it's shabiha. That's what main, like the Al-Assad people, like mukhabarat people or something.
Like, just coming back to the Sednaya for a second, if I may. This was like a very exclusive preview, by the way, so it's not online yet. So you guys were lucky, but it's going to be online, as you mentioned, in September. And my question would be, why do you think that this kind of architectural reconstruction, this 3D models, this walking people through those, prisons, what is the intention? What do you expect from it?
We start this project in 2017, and the idea, like after when ISIS start to leave like the cities in Syria and Iraq, and in this time I was looking like for my brother because he's kidnapped in 2013 and we didn't know anything about him. And I thought, as a journalist, I had a chance to look for him, to see like where he is. And I was hoping to find a document or like names in the walls like of ISIS prisons about him. And after weeks of filming in these prisons, I start to see these prisons change so quickly, because ISIS prisons, it's everything, like hospitals, schools, houses, everything's church, mosque. They do everything as a prison, like you don't know really. And there is no clear system to understand if the house of your neighbors, it's a prison or no, it's still house for them. It's like until there, like it's so crazy with this. And I decide with my team to save this building, to study all the names in the wall and all the stories, because in each wall there is, because you are, when you will be as a prisoner inside of these prisons, like ISIS prisons or the Syrian regime prisons, you don't know if you will survive this or not. And everybody have to write his name and the story, or if they will kill me, the people like was sleeping with me, like sleeping next to me in the, like, or like just living with me in this cell, they will say, okay, they killed this person on this day, in this date, like in this way. And we thought we need to save this building, and that was the 3D tours. It's this, I think the best way we thought it's to save, because we can, and also to understand like every details about this prison, like where like what was the system there, what experience the people had in this prison, because in each system there is many different types of prisons, and if we study them, that maybe can help the families to understand where is the missing people, because in ISIS prisons there is more than 50,000 human, like in Syria and Iraq in these prisons, and in Syria there is no specific numbers, but there is more than 150,000 persons still missing until today. And we thought also like to save all this information, because every wall it's a document, and that's the situation.
Now, the situation has changed since December. And in the last couple of minutes before we open it for everyone in the audience, I would like to ask you guys, what has changed specifically for your line of work? I mean, what kind of challenges are you dealing with at the moment? I know, Amer, you're still working on documenting more prisons and talking to more witnesses, but if you compare it to the first months and now, what's the situation? Give us a quick intake before we talk to Anna and Mariana.
It's like so huge change every month. Like in the first month, there was like really not so focused, the new like system, and that was easy, like bring us to, like we had like a list of 161 prisons around Syria, and with all the information, the location of each prison, and we thought like we wanted to film everything so quickly, because we didn't have in this time all our equipment, the 3D cameras in Syria. That was really like, it's really needed time to send all these things to Syria. And what we did, we filmed every room, every wall, like with the normal cameras, and like we did that with 72 prisons or 73 around Syria. And that was easy because nobody really wanted to, can't stop you. But after that, month after month, start to be so hard until, because like we didn't know what's going on, what they will do. And in the end, the plan was to use all these prisons again, like, and in the same way, and that's really the crazy things. It's just, we did the Syrian revolution in 2011 to not have this horrible prisons anymore in our life, and now we have them again with a new system, and like with the same smell, the same situation. And yeah, but
so basically you can't go in anymore easily like you did before.
We're still filming in Sednaya because there is only 2 prisons left, like Sednaya and Tadmor. But all of them, they are working as a prisons again.
That is a bit scary. Mariana, what's the situation with your line of work? Trying to investigate those crimes. Can you still do it in the same way that you did it in the first couple of days?
Thank you, Christine. I just want to thank Amir for this presentation. I want to acknowledge that it's not easy to work against a Syrian interim government that is literally working against everything that Amir and his team is doing. It's basically moving the other way, saying we want to look at the future. We don't want to look at the past. We don't want to think about crimes that happened in the past. We want to give amnesties to all of those war criminals who we consider are worthy of these amnesties without even them acknowledging their crimes. And we want to reproduce the cycle of violence that was occurring at a certain moment. And I think working exactly against it, against that with the memory, with the preservation of what actually happened for this not to occur again is very difficult. To come to the line of work that we do, we basically start from where Amir, for example, finishes with the documentation. We try to build case files as legal practitioners. And the problem there is within the situation that is happening at the moment, the Attorney General changing now twice, not having any plan, we don't have any legal framework for us to open any war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide cases, because in Syria, those are not criminalized or prosecuted. So, we need to have a legal framework that can actually allow us to open these cases. B, we need to have a strategy from the Attorney General, similar to what we have in different European countries. As Amir pointed out, Copland's trial came to happen in accordance to the universal jurisdiction that works in Germany and in other different European countries embedded within the criminal code there. We don't have that in Syria at the moment. So there is a lack of legal frameworks. There is a lack of strategy by the Attorney General. There is lack of transparency and access to them. I can give you an example. We've worked on the Ali al-Wahash events that occurred on the 5th of January 2014 for 5 years together with my colleague, and we submitted our investigation results to different European prosecution authorities and to UN mechanisms as well. And recently, one person was caught by the Syrian interim government under the allegation that he was one of those who actually participated in the mass killing. And then now the first question to us, because we received this information from witnesses and survivors we've been working with, and they want us to give these information to the Syrian interim government. And of course, we need to follow what they want. But then first question is, how do we reach the Syrian government? It's absurd that we can talk to prosecution authorities and war crime units in Europe, and we're welcome to talk to them, and we cannot talk to our own Attorney General. I think this is one of the biggest challenges to our work at the moment. The other challenge is related to transitional justice, and again, criminal justice is only one aspect of it, but as Amir said, there are different levels of that. And what we see at the moment with the Syrian interim government is that there is a will to transition from one regime to another, but there is definitely no will of transformation, or at least we don't see it. We see creation of different commissions, the Transitional Justice Commission, the Institute, the Institute of the missing people, but then those are institutes that are established by the government. The individuals who are leading them are appointed by the government, and it's never in conversation really with Syrians and how they imagine these processes taking place. And I think this is a huge gap as well and a difficulty for our work, if I may.
And Anna, to finish up on this point, if you look at the freedom of press, if you compare it, how you can do reporting with your team in Syria at the beginning of the situation and now, what has changed? What are the challenges for the reporters on the ground now?
Yeah, I think definitely both of you described very well that we see now the shift from one regime to the other regime. So definitely in terms of our work, you can also see that it's not that easy anymore to access Syria. Still we can access and still we get the permission, but of course they had to develop a process, which is good, definitely, to apply, and it takes time, and sometimes it takes much longer time than we expect, and we don't know why. There's no clear transparency why one of us gets granted the visa within 24 hours and the next one has to wait for several weeks. So it takes definitely more time to come to Syria. Still, we as international journalists are in a better situation than local journalists. I just talked to Reporters Without Borders about it, and they say definitely freedom of press in Syria is a big topic. It's not there. We saw the relaunch of the state TV just a month ago. Everyone was expecting, oh, now we get a new they were doing a lot of advertisement with a new role of state TV. Now it will be great news reporting and reliability, and truth is our reply to the world. But I mean, in fact, it's just what we saw before, but better made. So now we see a very modern state TV, but still they totally online with the government. They following the rules. They promoting Al-Shara as a new savior of Syria. So we can see that freedom of the press is still an issue, especially when we want to go, for example, to the regions where we had already new violence, talking about religious minorities, the Alevites, the Druze. So these are definitely topics the new government doesn't like to talk about. And yeah, we're very worried how the situation will continue. I mean, definitely they have an interest to have a nice image to the outside. They want to have the money from Europe, from the West. So they will, I expect, treat us as Western journalists still nicely. But definitely we can't talk about a full freedom of press in Syria.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your insights. I would now open and take the last minutes to have some questions from you guys, if you have any. I think we have microphones over there. Somebody's giving microphones. And we have a first question up here and the second one over there. So maybe we collect both of those questions together so we save some time. Can we start here?
Hey, thank you so much for incredible work, all of you, and especially Emma, I would like to ask you, and I hope it's not too personal, how did you deal with reporting about the places that so many of your super personal experiences were connected to and potentially might have been triggering also?
Okay, thanks for that question. We take the second one.
Hi.
Yeah, okay.
I also have a question for you. You were telling about the prison that you went back to where you were in and that there are new prisoners in there. Do you already know like what is happening to them, how they are treated? Is it the same way, the torture, or different ways? Or yeah.
Okay, it's two combined questions to you, Amar. So
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question. Like for me, it's really like to film, to go back to the, because in 2011 I was in many different prisons, like around 5 different prisons in a different time, and to film all of them and to make interview with the prisoners. Sometimes, like some of them was with me in the same time, and to ask them, and also my team make interview with me about this. It's changed sometimes, like somehow all my life, because all the nightmares I had all these years about the prison, they take me again to the prison. And it's really like somehow in the personal, like it's changing my relation with my past and my with myself so much. And it's really but there is like so many technical things. Like all these years I was working with my team about interviews, because we study all this information about each prison, and some people, they say, I don't remember this corridor, or I don't remember this place. And I was so shocked. How can you really forget these details? I thought it's unbelievable. When I returned to all these prisons, it's really what shocked me. It's like when you are there, because like all your eyes and relation with the place, it's changed so much, because when we go out of the cell, like to the toilets, they hit you. Maybe there is a 20 man hitting you on the way, and you see like a little corridor. It's so long because you get so many hit in the way. And that's why, like, in my memory, it's looked like it's a 20-meter long corridor, but it's so small. And also the place, like this, like you spend sometimes like 1 month with 40 men in a so small room, and you feel after times it's a big room, because we all here, and that start to be like your whole life, all these days, it's inside of this room. And when you turn there, you start to realize it's different. It's so small. And that's also like the smell. There is many different things. It's really, it's so, like I feel this experience changed me a lot, like to go back to these places, to be free man, working in this building and see. And I had my file. I saw my file. It's 88 pages. They was listening to my phone and all the things. And also I have my picture. I was so shocked when I saw my picture when, like, in 2011, when I was in this prison, how you look with all the fear in your eyes. It's I don't know. It's something really, crazy.
Okay, I think we have the next one.
Thank you so much for sharing your work and also your personal story. I have a question for Mariana and Amer. Amer, you said that the new regime decided not to save any of the history, and you mentioned that they want to use the history, the devastating history of the Assad regime. Could you say a bit more about that? Like, how are they trying to use it right now? What are they trying to do with the history of the prisons and of the terror that they perpetrate?
Like, first they destroyed like millions of documents, and that's for the document. It's really like there is some of the buildings I go there. There is like a archive room. It's maybe bigger than this room, and there is the HTS guard in the door. There is no one really can enter. It's so complicated situation. How can you process how to enter this building? I returned there again in 3 weeks, and it's just destroyed. It's just they put fire there and they destroy all this. And I witnessed that in more than really 15 places around Syria. Because we go and we knew that will happen, and we try to study this. But there is part of the question I forgot to answer. It's how to deal with the prisoners again, like in the same buildings. And the first time when I went to Al-Khatib prison, they was like nothing. They just sitting in the floor. It's the same when I was there in 2011. And it's the same smell, the same situation. But last time when I was there is one of the buildings. It's the name of this place. It's 227. It's one of the most crazy prisons in Syria. Thousands of people killed there, and we open the jailers, the new jailers. They open one door, and I thought there is nobody there, and he was telling everyone, "وشك على الحيط." It's mean like put your face on the wall, and that's the same system we had. And when somebody opened the door, you have just to run to the wall and to not see the jailer, and that was really shocking me because it's the same shit we have again, in the same. It's a different, but it's the same way dealing with the humans in the prisons.
Mariana, do you also want to comment on that? Is that also your observation that it's, to quote you, it's the same shit again?
You're asking me, Christine?
Yes, because the question was also asked to you.
That's 100%. I mean, I agree with Amer. It might not be on the same wide scale or widespread, or at least this is not reported to us yet, that it's as widespread and wide-scaled. It might not be as systematic in terms of orders, specific orders coming from the Syrian interim government for certain practices to happen. But we definitely, especially during the last month, we heard from people who their family members were detained in the detention raids on Sednaya, on other areas in Damascus, or in Damascus specifically, because those were who talked to us, or in Homs, where people were held in detention facilities. And you hear the stories, you hear, as Amer said, reproducing the same process, closing the eyes, torturing, not saying why the person is in the detention facility, not giving them any information, making them sign or stamp on documents that are empty, and then leaving the detention facility. And I think this kind of reproduction, as much as, at least from my perspective, it's predictable. And what needs to happen is a whole kind of regime transformation. We need to learn, they need to learn new tools, new ways of dealing with prisoners. We need to have new prisons. Those detention facilities are not to be reused. Those detention facilities are to be dealt with as memory, as remembrance for non-recurrence, as what happened in a lot of other countries. Germany, for example, with the Stasi time, Amer spoke about that he read his files, he read what happened, how the surveillance was occurring against them. Every Syrian should have the right to access those files, to understand what happened, to close this kind of circle of uncertainty and not knowing, and move on from this trauma, if people were able to move on from this immense trauma that the regime did. But what the Syrian interim government is doing is reproducing the trauma that is not even 5, 6, 8 months old at this stage, with seeing what happened to people in detention facilities.
I think we kind of have to come to close, but maybe one last question, if there is anyone left who wants to ask something. So one more, and we need quick answers, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insights. I wanted to ask if you, the three of you, did you get any chance to speak to survivors of Sednaya prison? Because I read on Wikipedia there have been survivors, so could you talk to them?
Maybe Anna, do you want to start? Because I know you were there very early on.
Yeah, definitely we had the chance. It was not easy to find them first, but later we found some, and we could talk to them. And I mean, what they described was very close to what Amadis just said, and also Mariana. It's such a shocking thing you can't imagine. I mean, this is the bottom of humankind, what you see there and what happened there. So definitely these things have to be investigated, and it's so important that the new regime will support the great work Mariana, Amma, and all the others are doing, because this is, I mean, the base for a new state to build up, to find, and the crimes to be investigated. And this is really a shocking thing that things are still delayed and not supported.
And I think, Amer, with Sednaya, there's going to be a lot of witnesses in the project, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like when we will publish the Sednaya prison, like will be in the first stage, 15 person, and after that, like also like 12, and then 15. Like, yeah, we spoke with, and there is thousands of survivors of Sednaya people.
Mariana, in your line of work, are you also working with Sednaya witnesses at the moment? No, okay. So I think, thank you so much. It is a bit of a bleak note, I think, of what's going on in Syria. But I think the good side is that people like you, Amer, and Mariana, and also Anna, that you are investigating, that you are documenting, that you are reporting. And as long as this is happening, I think we kind of also have a positive note that things, are watched and are not just happening in the dark anymore. I think that's also something good. And I hope this will stay the case. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much to Boston and to Cairo and for getting up so early. And all the best. And thanks to you guys for listening. Shukran.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.